Carl Jung discovered that you can recognize someone's true character by observing just two things. Not their words, not their accomplishments, not even how they act when others are watching. He found that two specific psychological patterns expose who someone truly is beneath the mask they wear. And most people reveal these without realizing it. Picture this. You're sitting across from someone you think you know, a friend, colleague, or even a partner. They appear genuine, trustworthy, composed, yet something feels off. Your instincts tell you there's more beneath the surface. Jung dedicated decades to studying what he called the persona, the mask we all wear to hide our authentic selves. But he discovered that no matter how carefully someone constructs their image, two psychological signals always break through. And once you know how to notice them, you'll never be deceived by a false persona again. These aren't complex psychological tests. They're simple observations that reveal the deepest truths about human behavior. By the end of this exploration, you won't just read others more clearly. You'll also gain insights about yourself you may have long avoided. That's what makes Jung's discovery unsettling. These two reveals don't just expose other people's character. They force you to confront your own hidden nature. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely," and these two windows into the psyche reveal parts of yourself you may resist facing. Most people assume character can be judged through surface behaviors, confidence, kindness, success, or charm. But Jung understood that these traits belong to what he called the performance layer, the polished image presented to the world. The real self lives beneath, and no matter how practiced someone is at managing appearances, two psychological patterns always expose their authentic nature. These patterns operate outside conscious control, which is why they are so dependable. Jung observed, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. Yet judgment based on appearances is usually wrong. True assessment requires looking deeper into unconscious behaviors people cannot fake or manipulate." What Jung discovered is this. Character reveals itself not in what people choose to display, but in what they cannot help but expose. These psychological signals appear whenever someone's guard drops, their mask slips, or they're under pressure. The first character reveal is what I call shadow mapping, discovering someone's true nature by noticing who they criticize most harshly. Jung explained, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This unconscious force shows itself most clearly in our judgments of others. When someone criticizes with unusual intensity, they're not just pointing something out. They're projecting their own denied traits onto that person. What we dislike most in others is often what we've buried deepest within ourselves. Consider David, a successful architect proud of his integrity. At office meetings, he regularly complains about his colleague Marcus, calling him fake and manipulative. David's tone sharpens when Marcus is praised. His jaw tightens when clients admire Marcus's charm. Jung would say David's strong reaction isn't about Marcus at all. It's about a part of David he rejects. Deep down, David wishes he could be more charming and socially confident, but he has suppressed this because he believes it would make him inauthentic. Jung wrote, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." David's harsh judgment of Marcus is actually self-oppression, a rejection of qualities that could benefit him. This is why shadow mapping is so reliable. When someone judges harshly, they are revealing inner conflicts. The traits they condemn most are often those they've pushed into the unconscious. And this projection isn't always negative. Jung also observed that we project positive traits we are afraid to claim. When someone constantly praises others as talented or confident, they may be projecting abilities they themselves have but fail to acknowledge. The key is emotional intensity. Whenever someone reacts disproportionately, whether negatively or positively, you're seeing their shadow. It reveals both what they've denied in themselves and what they secretly long to express. The second character reveal is what I call mask. Maintenance, observing how people behave when their carefully managed image is threatened. Jung wrote, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, yet most people invest enormous effort in maintaining who they think they should be. This maintenance is constant work, and Jung found that when someone's persona is challenged, when their mask slips or their image is questioned, their authentic character emerges in that vulnerable moment. To spot this, watch what happens when someone faces unexpected criticism, when their competence is doubted, or when they're caught making a mistake. Do they become defensive, lash out, deflect blame, or do they pause, reflect, and respond with honesty? Take Sarah, a marketing director admired for her calm professionalism. She built her career on being unflappable under pressure. But during a high-stakes client meeting, the client criticized her team's strategy, questioning Sarah's judgment. In that instant, Sarah's mask cracked. Her voice sharpened, her posture stiffened, and she interrupted the client, shifting blame onto her team while subtly criticizing the client's past decisions. The composed professional vanished, replaced by defensiveness and insecurity. Jung would argue that this moment revealed Sarah's true character more than years of calm behavior. Under pressure, when her crafted image was threatened, her deeper patterns surfaced. As Jung noted, the foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering. Sarah's resistance to criticism led her into defensive patterns that exposed her true character. What's important to recognize is that these breakdowns don't only surface during major crises. They appear in small everyday interactions. When someone's phone dies and they can't scroll social media. When they're left waiting longer than expected. When their joke doesn't land. In those brief moments, notice the micro-expressions, subtle tone shifts, or changes in body language. These tiny slips reveal far more about a person's character than hours of casual conversation. Jung understood that genuine character isn't what someone carefully chooses to display, it's what emerges when they are unprepared, unguarded, or under stress. Those who have reached integration, what Jung called individuation, demonstrate consistency between their outward persona and their authentic reactions. Their public image and private responses align because they've accepted themselves fully. Now that we've explored Jung's two methods of character revelation, let's look at why they work so reliably from a psychological standpoint. Jung devoted his career to studying the psyche's structure, how the mind organizes experience while protecting the ego. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed, but before any transformation, you must understand the true composition of each personality. Beneath the social performance, shadow projection is accurate because the unconscious doesn't separate self from other when dealing with rejected traits. For instance, when David accuses Marcus of being fake, his unconscious is actually grappling with his own struggle between authenticity and performance. Jung found that the unconscious projects these conflicts onto others, making them visible and workable. The intensity of someone's judgment directly reflects the intensity of their internal struggle. This is why people secure in a certain area rarely condemn others for weaknesses in that same area. A genuinely confident person doesn't attack others' insecurities. Someone authentically successful doesn't feel threatened by another's ambition. Jung also wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. Constant judgment of others signals inner loneliness, a disconnection from rejected aspects of oneself." The second reveal, persona breakdown, works because maintaining a false image consumes immense psychological energy. Jung called this ego maintenance, and he knew it becomes fragile under stress. When the persona is threatened, primitive defenses emerge, exposing core patterns. Do they lash out, showing underlying aggression? Do they retreat, reflecting avoidance? Do they deflect, suggesting dishonesty? Or do they integrate, showing maturity? Jung wrote, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." How someone responds to Criticism or challenge reveals whether they've integrated difficult emotions or remained controlled by them. Have you ever noticed someone's real character surface under pressure? Stress makes it visible. These patterns are consistent because they operate beneath conscious awareness. A person can carefully choose their words and control their expressions when prepared, but under strain, their authentic patterns emerge. Jung emphasized that character assessment isn't about catching lies or flaws. It's about seeing the whole person, their struggles, defenses, growth areas, and strengths. This deeper understanding fosters authentic connection instead of surface-level interaction. Beyond Jung's two main reveals, there's a third I call the integration test. It examines how someone handles their shadow when it's reflected back to them. This is the most powerful assessment because it shows whether they're capable of growth or remain stuck in unconscious cycles. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Here's how the integration test works. When you notice projection, gently reflect it back with curiosity, not accusation. For example, "I noticed you seem frustrated by people who show off." Have you ever felt like showing off but held yourself back? Their reaction reveals more in that moment than months of observation. Let's look at this in action with David, who criticized Marcus for being fake. If asked whether he ever wishes he were more socially skilled, David might respond in one of two ways. Response 1. The defensive pattern. "Are you saying I'm fake like Marcus? That's absurd. I'm authentic, not like him. I don't need to manipulate people to succeed." This reaction shows David is heavily defended against his shadow. His character is rigid, and his potential for growth is limited by his inability to recognize his own complexity. Response 2. The integrative pattern. "Sometimes I do wish I were better with people. I admire Marcus's social skills, even if his style bothers me. Maybe I'm envious of something I wish I had." This kind of response shows David can hold paradox, being disturbed by someone's behavior while also reflecting on his own relationship to it. Jung wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed." People who can integrate feedback about their shadow demonstrate this quality. They become stronger through self-awareness instead of weaker. The integration test highlights three character types Jung described. The unconscious type, completely unaware of their projections. They become defensive when confronted. They lack self-reflection and are often surprised by others' reactions. The aware but defended type, they recognize their projections intellectually but cannot integrate them emotionally. They might admit, "I know I judge people," but they can't explore what it reveals about themselves. The integrated type, able to notice their projections with curiosity, learn from them, and use them to guide personal growth. Jung called these individuals conscious, not perfect, but awake to their own psychological patterns. If you've learned to see your judgments as information about yourself, comment, "My projections became my teachers." This capacity for integration predicts how someone will respond to conflict, growth, criticism, and intimacy in relationships. Those unable to work with their shadow repeat patterns endlessly, blaming external factors for inner struggles. Those who consciously engage with projections move toward what Jung called individuation, becoming authentic, self-aware, and capable of genuine connection. Now that you understand Jung's framework for character assessment, let's look at its real-world application. But first, a crucial caution. Jung wrote, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power. And where the will to power is paramount, love is lacking." Use these insights to connect and understand, not to manipulate or dominate. Character assessment should serve compassion, not control, applying shadow mapping in different contexts. Romantic relationships. Notice how your partner talks about exes, colleagues, or people they dislike. If they often criticize selfishness, it may reflect their own struggle with healthy self-advocacy. If they attack neediness, they might be denying their own desire for closeness. Use these observations to understand and support, not to attack. If you notice projection, you might ask, it sounds like neediness bothers you. Do you sometimes feel you can't express your own needs? This opens space for deeper intimacy. Professional settings. Observe how colleagues react to feedback or challenges. Do they become defensive, shift blame, or attack the messenger? Or do they pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully? Their reactions reveal their capacity for growth, collaboration, and leadership under pressure. Jung noted, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Understanding these patterns helps you communicate in ways that match their psychological structure. Parenting. These insights are invaluable. When a teenager complains about friends being fake or attention-seeking, help them reflect on what this reveals about their own struggles with authenticity and belonging. This fosters self-awareness instead of judgment. But remember, character assessment is a two-way mirror. Jung wrote, "Everyone you meet knows something you don't know but need to know. Learn from them. Every judgment and reaction you have reveals something about your own psychology." Practical exercise. For the next week, keep a shadow journal. When someone irritates you, write down exactly what bothers you. Then ask, where might this exist in me? What about this trait makes me uncomfortable? Don't judge yourself for what you find. Jung wrote, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life." Self-acceptance is not indulgence, it is the basis of psychological health. Also, practice the integration test on yourself. When feedback triggers defensiveness, pause before reacting. Ask, what if there's truth in this? What could I learn about myself? Jung taught that character development isn't about perfection, but about consciousness. The goal is not to erase your shadow, but to work with it instead of being unconsciously controlled by it. Comment if you're ready to view your reactions as guides to self-understanding. I choose conscious self-discovery. Before going deeper, we must confront the shadow side of character assessment itself. Jung wrote, "The healthy man does not torture others. Generally, it is the tortured who turn into torturers." The ability to read character can become a form of psychological harm if misused. I've seen people twist Jung's insights into what I call shadow hunting, using psychological knowledge to attack vulnerabilities instead of fostering understanding. This is a complete distortion of Jung's work. He warned of this danger. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Sometimes people fixate on analyzing others precisely to avoid self-reflection. Warning signs you're misusing character assessment. You feel superior when you figure someone out. This reflects ego inflation, not genuine understanding. You use observations to manipulate or control. Leveraging others' shadow patterns for influence makes you psychologically toxic. You become judgmental instead of curious. True character assessment increases compassion, not criticism. If judgment grows, it's your own shadow being projected. You often avoid examining your own patterns. If you spend all your energy analyzing others but never apply that same lens inward, you're using psychology as a shield against self-awareness. Jung warned, the greatest danger is that one may get stuck in the unconscious and never return to reality. Many people become so absorbed in analysis that they lose touch with genuine human connection. The remedy, according to Jung, is what he called an ethical relationship to the unconscious. This means using psychological insight to foster love, understanding, and growth, not to gain power, control, or superiority. Always remember, everyone you encounter is fighting battles unseen. Jung wrote, "In order to know the light, we must first experience the darkness." What we perceive as projections or defensive personas often reveal someone's efforts to manage pain, trauma, or fear. True character assessment should cultivate humility, not arrogance. Seeing someone's psychological patterns means recognizing their humanity, their struggles, defenses, and attempts to navigate life with limited resources. Jung recognized that we are all wounded healers, carrying shadow material and wearing masks to guard our most fragile selves. The aim is not to strip away others' masks, but to create a safe space for authentic connection. Use insight to build bridges, not barriers. Let character awareness lead to compassion, not condemnation. The deepest aspect of Jung's approach is what I call the mirror effect. This is the realization that those you analyze are also reflecting aspects of your own psyche. Jung observed, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes. The ultimate purpose of reading character is to awaken to your own. The mirror effect works in several ways. First, people who trigger your strongest reactions often highlight your own shadow material. If arrogance annoys you, examine your relationship with confidence and humility. If neediness drains you, explore how you handle and express your own needs. Second, the qualities you admire in others often represent undeveloped potential within yourself. Jung called this positive projection, projecting unclaimed possibilities onto others. When you idolize someone's creativity or confidence, you may actually be seeing parts of yourself waiting to emerge. Third, once you spot patterns in others, you begin to notice them in yourself. Recognizing shadow projections or persona breakdowns in others makes it easier to catch your own in real time. This mirror effect creates a feedback loop of self-awareness. Every person becomes a teacher. Every interaction becomes a classroom. Every judgment becomes an opportunity for self-discovery. I've experienced this personally. I once worked with someone whose constant need for validation irritated me deeply. I dismissed them as insecure and attention-seeking, but Jung's framework forced me to ask why their behavior unsettled me so much. The truth was that I had my own unacknowledged relationship with validation. I had developed subtler ways of seeking approval, convincing myself they were different from this person's obvious methods. My criticism of them was actually self-rejection. I was condemning in them what I refused to face in myself. Jung reminded us, we are not what happened to us. We are what we wish to become. The mirror effect reveals not only who we've been, but who we might become. Every trait you notice in others exists as a possibility within yourself. This doesn't mean everyone will develop every trait. Jung emphasized individual differences and psychological types. But understanding others' patterns gives you a map of human potential, including your own unexplored territory. This mirror effect also explains why some people feel strangely familiar, even at first meeting. Jung called this the recognition of the archetypal, the universal human patterns that resonate with your own inner structure. As you grow in skill with Jung's character framework, you begin to embody what he described as the conscious individual. A conscious individual sees clearly without judgment, understands without manipulation, and connects authentically without losing themselves. Jung wrote, individuality is the opposite of being a member of a group, an institution, a race, or a nation. The conscious person thinks independently, feels genuinely, and relates authentically, rather than conforming to collective norms. This awareness has several qualities. You view shadow projections with compassion, not superiority. You recognize that judgments often reveal struggle, not moral failure. This perspective helps you respond to the pain behind projections, rather than reacting to the projections themselves. You notice persona breakdowns without taking them personally. When someone becomes defensive or lashes out, you see protective mechanisms, rather than authentic intent. This prevents you from being pulled into unconscious drama, and you learn to hold paradox. Jung wrote, the pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. You come to see that people can be both kind and cruel, strong and vulnerable, authentic and guarded, all at once. You use character insights to build connection rather than distance. When you recognize someone's psychological patterns, it deepens empathy for their struggles instead of reducing it. More importantly, you apply this same compassionate lens to yourself. Jung observed, "The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it. You learn to see your own shadow projections and persona defenses as useful information, not as faults. This awareness changes the way you navigate life. Conflicts become opportunities to understand. Difficult people turn into teachers. Even your reactions serve as data about your inner world." Yet Jung cautioned that awareness has a cost. He wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. When you clearly notice psychological patterns, you may feel isolated from those still moving unconsciously. This loneliness, however, is temporary. It is part of individuation. You're shifting from unconscious belonging to conscious connection. Old ways of relating through judgments, group personas, or shared projections no longer fulfill you, yet more genuine bonds become possible. By accepting the complexity in yourself and others, you can create relationships built on authenticity rather than illusions." Jung wrote, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. Conscious relationships feel light, creative, and alive, not repetitive or forced. The ultimate purpose of Jung's character framework isn't mastering analysis of others. It's becoming more fully human." He wrote, "Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious." As you observe shadow projections and persona breakdowns in others, you inevitably see them in yourself. This awareness gives you choice to act consciously rather than react blindly. Integration happens slowly through small moments, catching projections, noticing defenses, and choosing authenticity over reflex. Jung reminded us we don't really heal anything. We simply let it go. Releasing unconscious patterns lets your true character emerge, but this process isn't easy. Jung warned, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Seeing your own patterns requires facing parts of yourself you've avoided." Yet this is meaningful pain. It drives growth instead of stagnation. Integration usually follows stages. First, you notice patterns in others while ignoring your own. Second, you begin recognizing your own intellectually. Though you still get caught emotionally, you might think, "I'm projecting right now," while still feeling justified. Third, you learn to catch yourself in real time, creating space between trigger and response. Fourth, you start meeting others' unconscious patterns with awareness instead of defensiveness. When someone projects onto you, you recognize their struggle and respond with compassion and boundaries. Finally, you embody what Jung described as the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposing psychological forces in creative tension until something new forms. You grow comfortable with paradox, uncertainty, and complexity. As Jung wrote, "The difference between a good life and a bad life is how well you walk through the fire. The fire represents the unavoidable conflicts, projections, and persona breakdowns that shape human relationships. Approaching these experiences with awareness can transform them from destructive patterns into opportunities for growth. This shift doesn't happen instantly and is never fully complete. Consciousness is a lifelong practice, not a final destination. Yet each moment of awareness, each choice to respond rather than react, and each decision to see clearly instead of judging harshly, brings you closer to genuine selfhood. As you embody Jung's insights about character and consciousness, something powerful begins to unfold. Your awareness creates ripples that influence those around you. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. By refusing to take part in unconscious patterns, by not reacting defensively or feeding others' projections, you open space for healthier interactions. People notice this shift, even if they cannot explain it. They may say you appear calmer, different, or more authentic. What they are sensing is your reduced reactivity to their unconscious behavior. You're no longer reinforcing their projections or defenses. This creates what can be called a contagion of consciousness. Your awareness naturally invites others into greater awareness, not through preaching, but through example. Jung reminded us, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Your authentic presence speaks more loudly than words. Not everyone will welcome this change. Some may feel frustrated when you no longer engage in unconscious drama. They might even intensify their projections or defenses to draw you back into old dynamics. But others will be drawn to your awareness, like flowers leaning towards sunlight. They will sense the possibility of more genuine connection and slowly begin loosening their own defenses. This ripple effect moves beyond individual relationships into families, workplaces, and communities. When one person stops projecting their shadow and begins owning their authentic responses, it gives others permission to do the same. Jung believed that individual consciousness was the foundation for collective transformation. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." When you know yourself, your shadow as well as your authentic character beneath the persona, you become less vulnerable to the world's projections. You also become a guide for others seeking their own authenticity. Your courage to face your shadow encourages others to face theirs. Your willingness to drop your masks creates safety for others to do the same. This is the true purpose of character assessment, not to control or judge, but to understand psychological patterns deeply enough to respond consciously instead of reacting blindly. Jung's greatest legacy was not a set of methods or theories, but his invitation to choose awareness. Every person who selects consciousness over unconsciousness, authenticity over performance, and understanding over judgment, contributes to the growth of human consciousness, the two elements Jung identified that reveal true character, shadow projections and persona. The breakdowns are not simply tools for reading others. They are mirrors reflecting your own path toward awareness and authenticity. Jung said, "To be normal is the ultimate aim of the unsuccessful, but you are not here to be normal. You are here to be conscious, to see with clarity, to understand more deeply, and to connect more authentically with those around you. Each time you catch yourself judging someone, you have the chance to explore your own shadow. Each time you notice a mask slipping under pressure, you can examine your own defenses. Each time you resist the urge to use insight as a weapon, you are choosing awareness over unconsciousness." Jung understood that the pursuit of authentic selfhood is the most important work anyone can do, not only for personal growth, but for the collective evolution of consciousness. Your choice to face your shadow, to drop your masks, and to respond with awareness creates ripples that extend far beyond your own life. You become what Jung called a culture creator, someone who models new possibilities for human connection and awareness. The two reveals Jung discovered are not the end of character assessment, but the beginning of character development, your own development, and your contribution to the growth of everyone you meet. So watch for projections, notice persona breakdowns, but most importantly, turn that same clarity inward, because the ultimate character you are shaping is your own. If you'd like to explore further how consciousness reshapes relationships and personal power, check out my video on what happens when the empath survives the narcissist's darkness, where we go deeper into Jung's insights on transformation and authenticity. Your journey toward awareness begins with seeing clearly, and it ends with becoming who you truly are. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next dimension.